Hello, I'm Barbara Lucas, and welcome to The Green Room, a collaboration between Washtenaw County and Ann Arbor's Community Television Network. Our guest today is Dan Ezekiel, a retired science teacher and a lifelong leader in our environmental community, including outgoing chair of the local Sierra Club. He's here to talk with us about waste reduction. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you for having me.
Back when we started recycling 45 years ago, we were undergrads at the University of Michigan, and Ann Arbor was just getting started with curbside recycling. Obviously, recycling was the focus back then. And now there's a focus less on just recycling, but including the 3R hierarchy. Can you address that for us?
Sure. So reduce means you don't have to make it in the first place. So let's talk about a lunch bag. If the student has a durable lunchbox, then that lunch bag won't need to be made in the first place. So that's reduce. Reuse would be that the student has a lunch bag, but they bring it back home, which I used to do when I was in school, and then use it again the next day and the next. And then recycle is, well, at least you took that lunch bag and you put it back into the recycling bin to be made into another piece of paper instead of cutting down a tree to make the next piece of paper.
Along with this idea of reducing our use of something in the first place, we've got the whole idea of energy use because, being that there's this climate change emergency and the United States accounts for only about 5% of global population, while we're responsible for about a third of global energy use. How is reducing and reusing an energy saver?
Yeah, so where to even start with that question? So many things that we use are made in China. They have to be in other faraway places, and they have to be brought to us across the ocean by ships that are burning diesel. So that if we use less of it in the first place, eventually there's a whole ship that doesn't have to go across the ocean, and so forth. There's also tremendous energy in making new products. The classic example is an aluminum can. If you make an aluminum can out of another aluminum can, it uses about 5% of the energy as smelting the bauxite ore to make an aluminum can. So at every step of the game, there are energy inputs. And of course, it also takes energy to recycle. So that's why reusing and reducing are higher on the hierarchy. But even so, there's less energy in recycling compared to making a virgin product almost always.
And in the decades since you and I were born, Americans have doubled the amount of trash they throw away. Why are we throwing away so much trash?
Because there are very few barriers in the way of creating new throwaway products. And I'll just go off on a tangent here.
Sure.
I sort of cut my political teeth back in 1976 with the Help Abolish Throwaways campaign, which led to the Michigan Bottle Bill. And at that time, we didn't put plastic water containers under the bottle bill because there weren't any. If you'd have told us then that people would soon be buying water for $1 a bottle in a throwaway plastic bottle, we would have been amazed. Who would buy a bottle of water? But the whole industry of bottled water has formed since that time. So it's not covered under the bottle bill. There are some efforts now being made to put those water bottles into the bottle bill. Similarly with throwaway food, takeout food containers, especially from fast food. The fast food industry was in its infancy when we started Recycle Ann Arbor. I remember there was exactly one fast food store in the city, a McDonald's on Stadium where Lewis Jewelers is now. And so there just wasn't the volume of waste. And with today's lifestyle and everybody working and everybody super busy, there's just more and more and more and more throwaway products, and there's no action to stop them. It seems like at the governmental level. and what action there is gets thwarted. Back in 2016, Washtenaw County passed an ordinance to put a 10-cent tax on single-use grocery bags. And then the state legislature, in their wisdom, stepped in and preempted that law from going into effect. So there are multiple areas where we could work to try to improve this situation.
And do you think planned obsolescence has a role in this? It just seems to be an escalating force. Ends up with a lot of stuff being thrown away.
Absolutely. I think that you're also kind of alluding to a bigger issue. There are many actions that we can take on our own part to reduce the amount of waste, but then there are other actions that have to be taken by systems that are above the individual, governments or corporations. A simple example of that would be to have universal chargers for many different devices, so that when you get a new device, you don't have to get a new charger to go with it, and on and on and on. An individual can't do that, although we can press for that to happen. So, the first thing we need to do is to examine our own lives and say, are there wasteful practices that I have in my own life, and what can I change? But really, hopefully, as you step up those steps, you start to see from a higher plane and say, oh, well, here's some other things that need to happen that I can't personally affect, but where I can try to have some influence and join together with other people that care about these issues.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you and Anya Dale at the University of Michigan worked really, really hard on your recent Trash Talk tour. Do you want to tell us what that is, why you felt motivated to do that?
Okay. Well, I'm a teacher, and I belong to a group that's called the Washtenaw Zero Waste Coalition, and Anya does too. And there were many others involved in planning this, not just Anya and me. This was the work of many, many hands. But we wanted to showcase what people are doing in our community to reduce inputs to the landfill. And we also wanted to point out some of the obstacles to those efforts. And we also wanted like-minded people who care about these issues, to meet each other and start interacting and see what would come from that. And I understand that you took some video of the event.
Yeah, and I'm a lot of still pictures, and I'll show those now with a little spiel of what it was that I was looking at, and then we can talk about it.
Great, thanks.
The day started at Michigan Stadium, where we learned about their zero waste efforts.
All of the waste inside the stadium is in theory controlled, because you're not allowed to bring anything in. So everything is supposed to be recyclable or compostable.
We learned that getting everything in the right bins without contamination is a major challenge, but it's deemed worth it, as it's a great way to raise awareness, reaching many thousands of people every game day. Next, we were launched on the self-guided tour.
Just go to trashtalktour.org and you'll find a little map, and you'll find where the 10 stops are.
I started at the Recycle Ann Arbor drop-off station, which takes all kinds of materials for a small fee. Electronic waste, fluorescent light bulbs, oils, shredded paper, packing peanuts, free on appliances, rechargeable batteries, the list goes on. A representative from Washtenaw County was there, discussing the county's home toxics collection services. She also told me about a grant to reduce contamination in residential recycling bins by disseminating educational flyers and checking bins.
And if there were contaminants in the cart, they left a tag on the cart saying what the issue was and how they could fix it, what you can and can't recycle, and things like that. So before the program started, we did an audit at the materials recovery facility, and we had a contamination rate by weight of 19%. And so after the tagging, we did another audit at the facility, and our contamination rate went down to about 11.5%.
She said 89% of the tags that were given out were for plastic bags and plastic film, which should not go in the recycling bin, as they literally gum up the works at the recycling facility.
We heard from the MRF that for every single working shift, They end up having to shut the processing lines down for 2 hours to take out the bags that are tangled in it. And they also said that they used 6 workers during those 2 hours to take out the bags.
Plastic bags are also a common contaminant at another stop on the tour, Ann Arbor's compost facility. There, pallets, yard, and food waste are shredded to speed their breakdown. They have a large screening machine, a rotating drum with blower, to try to get out some of the plastic bags. Next was a climb atop the old landfill, which has been closed for decades due to its leaking and contaminating the groundwater. The decomposing waste inside is creating methane, a very destructive greenhouse gas, much of which is being captured and converted to energy. Allen's school was on the tour, where they're attempting to collect food waste in their cafeteria to send to the compost facility rather than the landfill. When it comes to reducing packaging waste, 3 stops on the tour sell items in bulk so you can dispense what you need into a plastic or paper bag, or ideally a reusable container, which you can bring in, borrow, or buy. These were By the Pound, the People's Food Co-op, and Bring Your Own Container. These stores also sell durable, reusable products that replace throwaways. A notable experiment by the city of Ann Arbor was seen at a stop at Zingerman's. 4 local restaurants are participating in a pilot program. They sell takeout food in durable containers, which they take back, wash, and reuse. Other examples of reuse on the tour were the PTO thrift shop, where you can get everything from furniture to clothes to bedding and craft supplies. And Common Cycle, which fixes used bikes for donation or sale, and also runs classes and drop-in sessions where they help you fix your own bike.
In a lot of cases, it's used parts that we've taken from bikes that are available for us to put on bikes as we're working on them. We have a supply of tires. These are mostly used tires that we've gotten from one source or another.
The tour gave lots of great ideas on breaking the buy and toss habit. Why waste all the energy and resources that go into making our products when we don't have to? Okay, that was a whirlwind tour of what we saw. And a lot of the things that I learned that day had to do with costs. And so I'd like to address that with you right now. For instance, plastic bag contamination was mentioned very frequently during the Trash Talk tour. And one thing about the price of plastic being so cheap, it's caused them to be kind of ubiquitous in our environment. And there's this concept of externalized costs, that the cost of the bags does not include the damages to society. Can you address that?
Absolutely. And this is the conundrum in a lot of areas that have to do with reducing waste. I would like to talk about plastic bags just for a minute. Plastic bags are the number one bugaboo of recycling. People think that they're recyclable or wish they were recyclable at the curb, and then they get in to the plants where the recyclables are processed, and the machines in the plants have a lot of trouble distinguishing plastic from paper. They're both very light, they're both often flat, and the plastic gets mixed in with the paper, it contaminates the paper. It also gets wound around the gears of the machinery. And oftentimes they have to stop the lines at the plant because of plastic bag contamination. Now, plastic bags themselves actually are recyclable if you just have nothing but plastic bags. And where to take them is to the store. Take them back to Kroger, take them back to Meijer. They have bins there to collect them, and there they actually get recycled. However, I'll just follow up on that example. It would be much cheaper for Meijer or Kroger to take those plastic bags and then throw them in the landfill. It's much more expensive for them to recycle them, but they do it to try to preserve their option to give out single-use plastic bags, to keep people from getting so agitated about that they ban it, which has happened already in plenty of states. But we make the tipping fees at landfills very low. That's something that the government can control. They could raise those tipping fees a lot, but they don't. In California, it's cheaper to tip compost than it is to tip trash into the landfill. Here, it's absolutely the other way around. So this goes back to those sort of institutional problems that we've been talking about before. Because the costs of waste are so often externalized, it's always going to cost a premium to recycle. If you made money by recycling, then you wouldn't have to worry about it because the private sector would take care of it. Nobody recycles gold. There aren't any bins set outside to put your scrap gold into, because if you have a gold ring that you don't want, a jeweler will buy it. It has a great deal of value. The materials that we're talking about don't have a high value in the economy, and unless we set the tipping fees high to dump them into landfills, it will always be cheaper to dump them than to remanufacture them. So the economics of recycling are very perverse and very complicated. Recycling is wild. Some people call it the last free market. The prices of recyclable materials can fluctuate. They can double, they can triple, they can plunge down to 10%, depending on what happens. When China decided they weren't going to accept our contaminated plastic for recycling anymore, the prices of all recyclables for a while just plunged to the point where it wiped out many recycling efforts in the United States. And then on the other hand, right now, for example, with lumber so expensive, right now the price that's paid for scrap cardboard is way up. Why? Because we're all sitting at home ordering from Amazon, and Amazon needs lots and lots and lots of boxes.
Yeah, it reminds me of what they said at the stadium during their talk. He said, in San Francisco, they pay triple their landfill as compared to compost. Here in Ann Arbor, it's the inverse. We pay triple to compost versus landfill. There's no financial incentive to zero waste, none. They need to change the financial incentives.